Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Vivek Bharata. In this video, we'll be covering what exactly is an API gateway and why it is needed in microservices. To begin with, what exactly is an API gateway? In a simple terms, it is a single entry point for all the client requests. Imagine we have two microservices, users and billing, and for this video I just jotted these two, but for a typical enterprise microservices architecture, we'll be having so many other microservices. Let's say if a client needs some information from user or billing, instead of this specific web application or mobile application calling directly to the user service or billing service, all the requests will be sent to API gateway. API gateway will identify the path and reroutes the request to that specific microservice. Looks like it is very simple and straightforward, right? Actually, no. API gateway can have many features. I'll walk you through the different stages how the data flows inside the API gateway. So let's say a client requests some information for a user info. Now the actual data first goes to the validation and then later there is a filter list. It's like access or deny list. So based on the fraud detection with all the other mechanisms, we can filter whether the request should be processed based on the IP address or some region blocked, something like this. Let's say there are some scam centers or some DDoS attacks which is triggering from a specific IP address or some with a specific region. So what we can do, the filter list can be updated with a set of denied IP addresses. So whenever any request comes from that specific IP, API gateway with the specific filter list stage, it can simply block the request so that it shouldn't even go through all the different phases of the API gateway and also to the actual microservice. After the filter list is passed, let's say, then it actually goes through the authentication and authorization. Having a single authentication authorization will actually saves a lot of time and effort to have an explicit checks at the microservices level. And then we have a rate limiting. Typically, a rate limiting can happen before the auth or after the auth, but based on the use cases, it can vary. Let's say if someone is trying to do a DDoS attack even after the authentication mechanism, a rate limit can actually limit the number of requests which is coming from a specific IP address or from the specific device ID and all that stuff, so that we can block the requests at the rate limit phase itself. And then it goes to service discovery. Service discovery points you to the proper IP address or the domain address of the specific microservice. So what exactly a service discovery is? Let's take this example, user service and billing service. These services frequently change their locations due to scaling, load balancing, or some failures, so making it a bit challenge to locate them consistently. So service discovery keeps a record of which service is deployed at which IP address and all, so that it's easy to dynamically point to the specific microservices. So moving on to the next phase, that is request transform. The typical protocol is HTTP as an input for the API gateway. From there, let's say billing service can have a different protocol. So request transform takes care of transforming that request protocol to be incompatible with that specific microservice. And from here, the request goes to the specific microservice. And as you can see, there are other blocks in the API gateway, that is error handling and circuit breaking. So in general, let's say if there is an issue with one instance of the billing, in that case, circuit breaker kicks in and it will prevent to send the request to the failed microservice. And in the meantime, another instance can spin up and it can start consuming the other requests. So let's say the whole billing service is down for some reason. In that case, API gateway will take care of error handling. And also there is another block called analytics. So as you can see, this is the actual entry point for the entire microservice. It will be very easy to have all the analytics here so that we can get a comprehensive data. And also monitoring and logging, and again these can be used internally with the rate limiting and filter list and any other modules. And also I would like to highlight, this is a typical data flow, not like an exact API definition. It can vary and the order also can vary based on the different use cases, and also we can disable few of the modules. As we have seen the internal modules of the API gateway, let's move on to the challenges. So the first challenge is single point of failure. Again, this is not like a typical challenge. API gateways can be deployed at each region. By any chance, if that region is off, the request can be redirected to the different regions API gateway. In one of the video of microservices, I have shown you that the API gateway is outside the region. But as I said, like let's say if one of the region is down, so there will be one service will take the decision to reroute the request to the different region. So that can also be considered as an API gateway. So don't get confused with that. So typically the API gateway will be there inside each region to prevent the single point of failure. Next one, increased latency. as we have introduced new module in middle of the request and all requests route through the gateway, it adds a slight overhead. And again, this can be minimized by adding some caching and optimizations. Next up is complexity. Introducing an API gateway means now you have an additional component to monitor and maintain. So choosing the right API gateway solution that fits your use case is very critical. To wrap up, an API gateway is a vital part of managing microservices effectively, especially as applications scale. By providing a centralized control point, it simplifies client interactions, secures data, optimizes requests, and enables smoother communication. As microservices architecture continues to grow in complexity, API gateways will remain essential to delivering reliable and efficient user experiences. If you found this breakdown of API gateways in microservices helpful, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe for more interesting content, and leave a comment if there is a concept you want to see next. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.